Hey guys, it's the Friction here, or Tiger Tank 12, however you wanna call me, I don't really care. And today, we're taking a look at possibly the most overpowered premium tank that has ever existed in World of Tanks. I'm not talking about the Scorpion G, I'm not talking about the IS-6, I'm talking about the French AMX M4 MLE 49. So I picked this tank up when it was released. I think that was about 2-3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, since I'm a tank collector, and the things I heard about this tank were amazing, so I pretty much thought this was going to be a great tank until I discovered this is going to be the best tier A premium tank in World of Tanks. And that is not a good thing. This tank is so imbalanced, it can even be better than some tier 9 tanks, almost scraping a tier 10 from the armor. And if you have not heard of this tank by now, well, you must have probably not played World of Tanks very recently. So, for all the people who are interested, I will show you guys today what kind of tank we are facing here and why releasing more of such tanks is going to be quite bad for World of Tanks. So, first of all, let's look at the tank model. It is an AMX M4. Well, there's a tier 7 AMX M4, right? Well, we can actually take a look at that tier 7 AMX M4. Really enjoyed playing that vehicle. So, preview vehicle. I used to own it. Let's give it a full upgrade. We have to put on the tracks right here, and there we go. That is the fully upgraded AMX M4. It looks very similar, right? Only difference is armor, 90 millimeters on the front, 100 millimeters on the turret. This vehicle right here is not heavily armored. Even for this tier, it's going to get hammered away by anything that is going to shoot at it that is tier 7 or tier 6. Well, I think a lot of tier 7s. So if you compare it to the other AMX, this vehicle all of a sudden has a completely new hull. This hull, this frontal armor here, is 190 millimeters thick. 190 millimeters. The turret is 250 millimeters thick. If you compare it to the T110E5, let's see, where's my T110E5? The T110E5's turret is 203 millimeters thick, and that thing is already really difficult to penetrate. Almost nothing can penetrate the turret. Now, of course, you're gonna tell me, well, it's a little bit more angled. You have flat surfaces here, or semi-flat. You're not gonna go through the turret. And this is the main problem that we have. We're having a tier 8 vehicle that is going up against tier 6 tanks. Tier 6 tanks, tier 7 tanks that already have troubles with IS-6s. But it's a very nice looking tank, isn't it? So let's jump right into the comparison. I've prepared some tanks that I want to compare. New premium tanks that were actually released, the T26E5. I never picked that one up because I don't know, I have the T32 and I don't need an additional American tier 8 heavy tank. Already have the T34, I don't need any more. 112, I already owned that for quite a while. And all these tanks right here and the i6 have one thing in common. They are tier 8 premium tanks and they all are heavy tanks. And all of them have decent armor, at least frontal armor. The IS6, which used to be the king of tier 8, at least the gun on this tank was not the best. Now this tank is combining all the good things, and it almost does not have any backdrops. So let's take a look at the firepower. Now obviously all of these tanks are running different calibers. This AMX M449 is running 105, no actually it's a 100 millimeter gun. The same that you are running on the AMX 5100, it's very similar. From the pen, it's actually the same. Then we have obviously the T26, which is running a T20, a 90 millimeter gun. Then you have the 112 and the i6, who are both running 100 and 22 millimeters, I think, if I'm not mistaken. We can take a look at that real fast, so I'm not selling you guys false information. 122, yeah. The standard 122 millimeter gun that starts, or that used to start in World of Tanks at tier 6 with the KV-1S until it was actually nerfed. And that was one of the worst tanks. It was one of the, well, in that case, it was one of the worst balanced tanks. The KV-1S was one of the strongest tanks for tier. Even it destroyed, it demolished tier 7s. It was a tier 6, and I mean, yeah. No need to go back to the KV-1S. I really enjoy playing that tank though. So, caliber wise, you obviously have the IS-6 and the 112 who have the best alpha damage. The standard shell penetration though, that is a different story. You have all the way 290 millimeters on the AMX M4. Now this is just with premium rounds, 232 millimeters with AP rounds, and I think 232 with the 90 millimeter gun. But this American tier 8 heavy actually fires APCR rounds. So the rate of fire is the best on the T26, which shows you with 6.9 seconds reload time. That is quite impressive. Now the IS-6 and the 112 are the worst in that category. 12 seconds or 13 seconds almost for the 112. And you can see the AMX M4 is actually in the middle area. It's a bit better than the IS-6, but it's not as nearly as good as the T26. So that at least it does not have that going for itself. But it does have a turret traverse speed of 29.2 degrees per second. That is the best in the category of the 4 vehicles that we have. It does have 10 degrees of gun depression. That is 4 degrees more than the IS-6 and the 112. It does have an aim time of 2.78. Once again, not the best, but not the worst. And the dispersion of 0.35, which is quite impressive. The DPM is not the same. It's not as good as the IS-6 or the T26, which is kind of weird that the IS-6 is... Well, obviously the IS-6 has the same amount of DPM, or almost as the T26 because of the alpha damage. And all in all, the firepower of this AMX M4 is quite impressive. For a tier 8 heavy tank, it has a very nice punchy gun, 232 millimeters of pen, all the way up to 375 HP worth of damage per shot. Alpha is not too bad. The rate of fire is mediocre and the aim time is also mediocre, but you have a great gun depression. Now we're going to get to the one thing that I think is breaking this tank, or pretty much just breaking the entire balancing of this tank and breaking the entire game. Now obviously this is a premium tank, people paid money for it, they will not want it to be nerfed. Survivability, this is the creme de la creme. 1500 HP on almost all the tanks except for the IS-6, which has 50 HP more. 190 millimeters of frontal armor on the AMX M4. Now think about it, 190, and look at the angle. Look at the angle right here. I mean, it's almost flat, but 190 millimeter. Which tank at tier 8 can penetrate the frontal plate at this angle? I can tell you, you'll see afterwards in the game. So survivability once again, 55 millimeters on the side, 40 on the rear. That is okay. If you compare it to the other vehicles, it still has 40, like almost 40 millimeters armor thickness more than the T26. And the T26 already is very, very nicely armored because it does have this very nice angle. It's like the T32. The 112 has 120 millimeters up front. The IS-6 100 millimeters. And the IS-6 with the 100 millimeters with this angle is able to bounce a lot of shit on its frontal plate. 250 millimeters on the front part of the turret. That is more than the T26. The only tank in this category that can come to this level is the 112. And the 112 obviously has 2 weak spots on top. Those 2 hatches. While the Amex M4 has that 1 hatch on the right side, which you can actually try to hide if you're going up against guys on the ridgeline. It does have the gun depression, it does have the turret armor, and it does have the firepower and the reload speed, which the 112 does not have. So that people can actually peek the corner and take pop shots at this tank and shoot at its upper, at its lower plate, or at its 2 commander's hatches on top. So that is the main problem that we have here. We have a tank that is so well armored that any other vehicle that is trying to go up against it at the same tier is going to have a hard time. Now, mobility wise, this has the best engine, 1000 horsepower. It's not only well armored, it's also quite good on the move. 40 kilometers, it's not slow, you'll get around good enough. So I do not understand what Wargaming was thinking when, or at least the balancing compartment, when they when they actually made this tank and released it. 190 on the front, 250 on the front on the turret. Good mobility or decent mobility, great firepower, and good accuracy as well. I think great gun depression, gun elevation. This tank is pretty much for the same tier, it has it all. Concealment, if you look at concealment right here, it's not the best concealed tank, but it's also not that shabby. And spotting, it does have the best signal range, but not the best spotting. So spotting you'll have to cop back on. But the one thing that is just breaking balancing at tier 8 now is this amazing arm that you have. The gun, on the other hand, with 232 millimeters, if it would not have the armor, I don't think it would be a problem. But with the armor and 232 millimeters of pen, you'll be able to do quite a lot of damage. Also against tier 10 tanks. If you're facing tier 10 tanks, just shoot gold. You have 263 millimeters of pen. That is standard ammo of a tier 10 medium tank. The E50M has 270 millimeters pen with its standard APCR rounds. So you're not going to be too bad with this tank. So let's take a look what this tank actually does to matchmaking. The game that I've readied for you guys is on steps, and actually it's just like the other video. It is an encounter game, and I haven't played encounter for a long time. This time though, I knew what I was getting myself into. So encounter, you have pretty much 2 ways to go, since both start on the same side. If you want to go to the direct action and have some one-on-one engagements and, you know, just brawl it out, you can just go down here and you have this little ridgeline over here, while the enemies have this little cove where they can get some cover. Of course, you can also go for the flag and try to fight the guys on the 9 and 0 and 8 line. But I decided to go for the direct approach, since I do have a tank which is really, really powerful. It does have very, very good armor. Now, it is a little bit hypercritical of me for calling this tank quite OP, or a little bit like, I mean, balancing wise, this tank is has some quite a catastrophic impacts on the game, since people generally don't like fighting this tank, and you'll see why no one wants to fight this vehicle. And you can see right here the frontal armor. This T-32 has a 100mm gun. He's way too aggressive going up against me, and he's just gonna bounce one shell after another on my frontal armor. And that is just one of the things that cannot be a part of the game. Now obviously every tank has some weak spots. This tank does have weak spots as well, but you saw that these people are just having a real hard time. Now, obviously, if they would be aiming at my weak spot, which is my commander's hatch on top, they would probably be able to penetrate me 5 times out of 10 shots, maybe. And if you look at this, it's just the armor of this vehicle holds up against so many different tanks. I'm up against 2 tanks right now, all of them playing a little bit too aggressive, and you can see how easily we can just take care of them. The T-29 over there is just pushing, and he doesn't even want to fight me. He doesn't want to shoot me because he knows that he's not going to be able to penetrate me. And we bounce another shot from the T-29, and we actually finish him off. Now let's look at our frontal plate, and you can see all of the people are shooting our top part of the tank. Now if you shoot the lower part, the lower plate right there, you'll be able to penetrate this tank if you have a decent amount of pen. For example, that that M46 Korean Patton was able to penetrate us, but only once. You can see he's going to bounce off our upper plate, and he's bouncing off our turret, and we can just finish them off one by one and move on. And this is exactly one of the reasons why I think that wargaming has kind of screwed up the premium tank market, because tanks like this vehicle right here, for example, just are not good for balancing. Excuse me. Now the T-29 on the other hand, he's going to be able to penetrate us, I think, and he manages to put another shot into our lower plate. But obviously at long ranges, if you can hide that lower plate, this tank gets really, really powerful. I mean, it does have a very good gun, and you can see that M46 Patton Korea is still bouncing off our tank. Now, there is one thing that I need to highlight though, and that is if you're on the side of this tank and you have a side profile like this, you can actually penetrate it by shooting these 90 or pretty flat surfaces on the side of the armor, since it's not just one big blob that is frontally going downwards, at least the upper plate. You can actually penetrate the side right here. Like if several tanks engage this vehicle, you'll be able to take it out. But the same thing goes for the Kranwagen. If you have the right angle and if you have enough vehicles, you'll be able to take out the Kranwagen as well. But that doesn't solve the things that if this vehicle right here is able to go in a one-on-one engagement against you, the people will probably have quite a bad time facing this tank. That M46 did not have a lot of fun in that game, I can tell you guys that much. I think I made it, I dealt about 5,000 something damage, and you can just see how this armor for a tier 8 premium tank is just bouncing all kinds of shots. Even on the lower plate, as you can see right there. And that is just one of the problems that wargaming need to adjust. Premium tanks that get more and more powerful, like the AMX M449, they just kind of break the flow of the game. At least for some tier 8 vehicles and other tier 6, tier 7 opponents, they are kind of taking away a lot of the fun in certain matches, and they add a lot to the frustration. So this game I did 5,260 damage, and I bounced 3,800 damage in a tier 8 heavy tank. You have to think about that. It is quite hypocritical though that I own this vehicle. So if I do not enjoy wargaming, creating premium monsters that are just able to finish off any other vehicles of the same tier, why do you support it by buying it? Well, I bought it because I wanted to train my French crew, since I am going to be unlocking the AMX50B pretty soon. I needed a new vehicle, and I decided to go for this one, since I'm also a tank collector. But it is quite hypocritical still of me that I actually bought it, although I do not want to support this kind of action, that Wargaming continues to bring out new and better premium tanks that just make the older standard tanks look bad. Because, I mean, the people who play other tanks also probably will pay for the game, and if everybody just buys this tank, and if everybody just gets a vehicle like this, it would be not a lot of fun, right, in matchmaking. If they would have made this tank the tier 8 vehicle for the French, or made a new line for the French heavies, and added that one in so everybody could get it, I think it would be fair, because the Kranwagen, everybody can get the Kranwagen. You don't need to, but everybody can do it. While this vehicle you'll have to spend real money on. So, my final verdict on this tank, it is absolutely OP. It's quite difficult to take out of the action if you have only the front to your to your face. So engaging this tank with 2 or 3 tanks is almost a must. And the main weak spot is still the Cupola. The Cupola doesn't bounce anything most of the time. That one just eats shells like crazy. So if you're faced in a close range engagement against this tank and you do not have the side panel right here, or this side panel, or if you are unable to penetrate the lower plate, go for the commander's hatch, because almost every caliber can actually penetrate that hatch. This tank does not have the best reload time, the best DPM, but still it is very powerful if you let this tank dictate the pace of combat. Like you saw me do that over there. I just waited for these guys to push in. I took them out one by one. They weren't able to penetrate my lower plate. And I've seen this happen quite a lot of times. Also, if you're like cresting a ridgeline with this turret, well, good riddance to the enemy. They're going to be bouncing off the turret as long as they do not shoot the commander's hatch. So I would really like to hear your guys' opinion on this vehicle. Is this tank too overpowered? Is it balanced? Am I just being irrational right now? What do you guys think? Did you guys pick it up? What do you think about this tank? And I'll see you guys in the next one.